What's up everybody, Arrg the Pirate here, and today I want to talk about the basics of Paragon. There are four main positions in Paragon. First the jungler, then the safe lane. Next we have the middle lane, followed by the off lane. You are not limited by your hero choice as to what lane you pick. You can go anywhere you want, but each hero benefits differently from the lane and role that they choose. For example, Gideon gains a lot from getting rank 4 on Cosmic Rift, which should be at level 8, but he also gains a lot from having card power. So it's very beneficial for him to stay in mid lane, that way he gets both card power and experience. Now let's talk about leveling up. There are two ways to level up in Paragon. One is card power, one is hero level. Hero level is gained by being close to an enemy when they die. If you see when an enemy minion dies, a blue number will pop up on the screen. That is the amount of experience you are getting. Card power is gained by getting last hits. Last hits on enemy minions and enemy heroes both gain you card power. As long as you get the last hit that kills that enemy, you will receive card power. Constantly attacking the minions is not always the best idea. If you would like to constantly push a lane by killing the minions, aim for the minions that are not being hit by your minions, for instance the ranged ones. And just before your minion wave gets a kill, make sure to secure that final hit. Hitting an enemy hero will cause the close by enemy minions to attack you. If you notice, that's what I'm doing here. I hit this rampage and immediately the two melee minions come to attack me. Now this can be a problem if there is a very large minion wave, because minions do decent amount of damage when they are grouped together. Right here, I notice the enemy rampage is trying to back. So I want to prevent him from going back, just to keep him out of lane a little longer. By going and attacking him, he will be forced to stop backing and retreat a little more. This allows me to have a little more freedom because I know their rampage is going to be 20 seconds later coming back into lane. Now let's talk about the map, its objectives, and its buffs. Starting at the core, I'm going to take the jump pad and run down our safe lane. The first area we come to is our safe lane inhib. When the inhib goes down, the enemy team spawns super minions. These super minions do damage and are capable of pushing lanes. The next area is our tier 2 tower. When our tier 2 tower goes down, the jump pads deactivate. Lastly, the tier 1 tower. This is the first tower that will go down. Next, I'm going to talk about Raptor Camp. The Raptor Camp is on the left side of mid lane if you're on the green side of the map. Raptors spawn in at 10 minutes and reward heroes 650 card points for that last hit. Next, we'll look at Orb Prime. Orb Prime is located just to the right if you're on the green side. Orb Prime is a team-wide buff that applies to every living member on the team. If you have downed members, they will not receive this buff. Each living team member will receive 1.5% health and mana regen, as well as an aura that gives 25% health to nearby minions, and it lasts 150 seconds. Now, let's talk about buffs. First, I'm going to show y'all the location of the buffs. Starting with the gold buff. The gold buff is a 300 CXP boost for the hero that gets the final hit. The gold buff is located in the safe lane for both teams, so the safe lane and the off lane. The buffs spawn in at 3 minutes, and then every odd minute after the 3-minute mark. So at 3, 5, 7, 9, and so on. These buffs gives you and your team great advantages and should be picked up every time you get a chance. Next, let's talk about river buffs. River buffs are located on the left and the right side, in between mid lane and safe and off lane. At the 3-minute mark, I head over to the buff for the left side. This is the purple buff. It gives you a 40-second buff putting you in the shadow plane. When you are in the shadow plane, you can only be seen by other things in the shadow plane. This includes wards. Shadow wards will still be able to detect you, but you can also detect them, and you can use this as a tool to get rid of shadow wards. If you spot a ward while in the shadow plane, do not take action yourself. Any action other than using a mana potion or a healing potion will take you out of the shadow plane. It's best to ping your team, "I need help," and stand close to the ward, so it will reveal it to them and they can destroy the ward. In this clip, I head over to the right side river buff, and it's another purple buff. So I'm going to go ahead and take this purple buff and show you that placing wards will take you out of the shadow plane. The shadow buff or purple buff are great for heroes that are planning on ganking. It's also a great escape tool. If you're low on health and you know the river buffs are up and you can get over there and hey, one's a purple, by getting that, you can almost guarantee getting away. One way to stop someone that you know has a purple buff is to place shadow wards, and then you will have vision on that hero. This is blue buff. Blue buff is a speed boost that lasts 25 seconds. And although it's not the best buff, it can help you escape enemies if you need to, or even catch up to enemies. But it's always great to secure these buffs because keeping them out of the enemy hands is the #1 thing. The next buff we're going to look at is red buff. Red buff is an ability damage buff, so it is best on casters or heroes that have high ability damage. Heroes such as Murdoch or Sparrow do not benefit near as much from red buff as heroes like Gideon or Gadget. If you are at the river buffs when they show up and your team is not close, I would recommend taking the river buffs no matter what they are. There is no sense in leaving a buff like red buff for your caster if you're not a caster hero. This next clip shows me getting black buff. Now, as a ranged caster, I am able to secure this buff without dropping down to the bottom. I run over to this fog wall and aim where the buff is, drop my rock, and I'm able to secure that black buff. Black buff puts a small damage over time on enemies that you hit with your basic attack. Right here, if you see I hit this ranged minion, I do 62 damage and then he ticks for an additional 60 damage. Black buff in a way is the opposite of red buff. Heroes with high basic attacks benefit the most from black buff because their basic attack is going to hit much harder than mine. All river buffs give mana regen. This includes black, red, purple, and blue. This is a critical part of staying in lane early game as a mid lane hero. Most of the time, mid lane heroes are your casters who use a lot more mana than other heroes. By securing these river buffs every 2 minutes, you are able to stay in lane longer and continue farming levels and card experience. The last buff we're going to talk about is green buff. Green buff is an overshield that does damage when things attack you. This buff is mainly reserved for your jungler or your frontline hero, so they can withstand a little more damage and be able to stay in the fight without getting melted just straight away. Starting out from the core, this is the path you take to get to green buff. Now, there's two things to really know about green buff. One, casters shouldn't really take it. Leave this for either your ADC, your jungler, or your frontliner if those two are separate. The second is, by just killing the green monster, that gives you the buff. But if you run away and let these two small minions reset, the green buff will never respawn until these minions are dead. With the green buff, every time you take damage, you do a little bit of damage back to your attacker. Once the shield expires, it explodes for a good portion of damage. So by giving this to a frontline fighter that's going to be getting hit a lot, you are able to keep him alive a little bit longer. In part 2 of this beginner guide series, I will explain the better uses and understanding of green buff when I talk about the jungler role. That's going to wrap it up for my part 1 of this understanding guide to Paragon. The only small piece of information that I left out was about Amber Links and how they can affect the team. But that's more of a jungle specific role. And just like the green buff, I will be speaking more about this in part 2. I really hope this guide helped you understand just the fundamentals of Paragon, and I'm really looking forward to getting part 2 out, as well as covering all the different roles and positions of each hero. If you have any questions or need me to explain anything more, leave me a comment, show me some love, tell me how I can improve, and as always, I really appreciate y'all guys sticking around. Thanks, and we'll see you later.